Hello, Nation. Welcome to the Haven Nation Show, your destination for all things Lock Haven sports. I'm your host, Nicholas Severini. We're coming to you live from the Bear Country Studios' basement in Avis, Pennsylvania. I am coughing a lot less, and so is my co-host for this evening's proceedings, Ryan States. Ryan, we have made it to, I think it's week 6 of this show.
Yeah.
We're into week 4 of the Division II college football season. Kind of, I would say, what I think where both of us expected the Bald Eagles to be. We've certainly been surprised by some, unsurprised by others, and now here we are, in back at home after a long road trip. It's going to be nice. I got to tell you, the first thing I think of with this week is, thank goodness, the next 2 weeks. Not a lot of road tripping we've had the first couple weeks.
Yeah, no drives. You meet me at 5 a.m., or me get up at 5 a.m., you meet me at 6 in my apartment to drive 3.5 hours to Cal on 2 hours of sleep. That was not fun last week. Yeah, we get home this week for Lock Haven. It's a short 40-minute drive for Jersey Shore. Then the next week, Jersey Shore's at home, and then a short hour drive to Bloomsburg. So we've got a nice little 2-week respite coming up here.
For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is always the part of the podcast around the first 7 minutes or so where we talk about just how the week has been. So feel free to skip. I'll do this. For those of you tuning in, you see this hat is flipped this way. When we're ready to talk about Lock Haven, we're going to flip that sucker back around. I think that's perfect because I'm too lazy to do bookmarks for these because I work a full-time job and I do this. So there you go. You want to watch? You want to skip to the Lock Haven part? There it is. So California was the road trip. It was a home-to-road for us. Jersey Shore defeating Shikellamy. You know, it's funny because we just had the longest road trip of the season. We're going to have another long one in a couple weeks. I always have a saying with broadcasting is that when you're in this profession, you meet some of the worst people ever and some of the best people ever. And Shikellamy, I think we did both in one show. But one of the best people I have met is Kevin Hurt. He is the radio sports producer for WKOK. Incredibly nice man. He actually, my first year out here, gave me a couple of gigs doing high school sports for Shikellamy, in fact. So it was nice to see him for the first time in a couple of years. But he had a very interesting point that he told me because he used to do Bucknell radio color commentary. Now he only does them for home games. I asked him, hey, why not? And he said, I just couldn't do the grind anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's something, Ryan, who you're in really the first full year of doing this, is that this job, this profession is so much more of a grind than I think people realize. It is a dream job. It is the best job in the world. But part of this job and part of this profession is the 5 a.m. drives where you don't get home until the sun sets. And I think you have to learn to like it or it will tear you apart. And I think learning to like it is probably the hardest part of this gig.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, going back to that Jersey Shore game on Friday, game starts at 7. You get done. You get home around 10:30. Then obviously for me, I write for a couple newspapers, the Express and PA Football News. So you're writing until 12 o'clock at night. Then it's the pressure of, I got to get up in 5 hours to get ready to go travel or go ride in a car 3.5 hours down to Cal. Feel the pressure. You don't go to bed till about 3 in the morning. Get up. I think I remember the Glenville State game last year. I was on, I think, like 30 minutes of sleep going to that game. Not even broadcast that game. That was just me writing. Yeah, so it's the lack of sleep sometimes is fun, and the having to find ways to eat meals during the day. Like you kind of have to pick it out as you go along. You eat when you can, but a lot of the time you're on the road doing a bunch of stuff. It's fun, but it certainly is. It's a lot more of a grind than I thought it was, certainly. Because last year only doing Saturdays, I never had to worry about the Friday aspect. Now you tack that on. It certainly is. It's a lot to deal with, and it's a lot to get used to. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I think it comes back to what I was saying before, is that you meet some polar types of people, and I think people that do it at this level do it for either personal glory or for the love of it. Like there's no real in between, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And, you meet so many. And the reason why I'm very reminiscent, I didn't realize this. I always forget it. But this week is my 8-year anniversary of when I started broadcasting.
Really?
My freshman year at U92 The Moose, a college radio station at West Virginia. Ryan Decker was the one that hired me, and I did my first sports update this week 8 frickin' years ago.
Wow.
October was my first time on air doing sports talk. December, November, whatever was my first time doing commentary. But I think it's a very weird moment because whenever we talk about the grind and we complain sometimes about the drives, I think back to like how I was when I was first hired and like how I would have killed for this, just to do this. And I'm thankful every day that I'm able to have this job. I don't want to get too emotional on a Monday night, but it genuinely, it's such a dream to do this. And I laugh when, sometimes our work is limited to a quote that's off topic on a message board or a comment section on a comment on YouTube during a broadcast, but it really is for me the culmination of an 8-year journey to be here, and I genuinely wouldn't trade it for the world. The only reason I wouldn't do this the next 40 years of my life is because they don't. It's because I don't get paid a living wage. But if I did, I would.
Oh yeah.
And I'm always going to be thankful for Lock Haven and Dave and Karen for allowing me to do this, because this isn't a guarantee. You know what I mean? This could be the last year. Who knows what happens? But I love this, and I will do this the next 40 years if I'm able to. And I'm always going to, be thankful for it. I'm going to be thankful for the 3-hour drives to Cal and the 4.5 drives to Glenville State, and even doing the crappy teams, because in the end I do this because it's such a cool thing to do.
Oh yeah.
And seeing and being able to tell the story of these athletes as they come in and they blah blah blah, they do everything. I was talking to John Hogue, the engineer. He was asking me about, he asked like, why, how can you be like so passionate about it? Because, Cal that we're about to talk about was a blowout really from the start. And I said, it's because of the athletes. Yeah. And if I'm able to keep, and I know I'm being very narcissistic talking about myself this long, but I feel like you find out really quickly who's in this job for what reason. And when people do this for the athletes and they do this to show out the athletes and tell the story of a game and a program and the players, I think that's when you meet some of the greatest people you'll ever meet in your life. And in the 8 years I've done this, I've met some of those people, and I would love to do this another, 40 plus and meet some more incredible people like you, Ryan. Well, I met you and I'm very thankful for it. And a very reminiscing time in a very random episode of this podcast, but I find myself very thankful in this moment, and I felt like I needed to exploitate that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I owe me doing a lot of this to you. I mean, my dad started me doing this in high school, doing high school basketball. And then when I came here, you were the one who pushed me to do football stuff. You asked me last year about doing high school stuff. This year I was able to do it, and then you're the one who brought up doing the podcast and stuff and doing all this down here. So I owe a lot of this to you that I'm able to do it. But I 100% agree. It's the best job in the world. And the reason it is because you get to tell the story of a program and of the players and of the coaches in that program. Like, you just kind of get to become the catalyst for that story almost. Like, you're the one that's able to get that story out there and get it circulating.
Like, I know women's basketball, I know I'm going to cry on air when it's senior day. Senior day, that type of thing. I really hope they do, if they win something. Like, I know that, I've never cried on air before. I've come close once. I've teared up once. But I know that would be my first time if that women's team, even on senior night, because I started with Lock Haven when all those seniors were freshmen. Yeah. And to have such a talented program-altering class stick together. I am so off the ropes here with what we're talking about, but it's about those moments, and it's about the time with those athletes, and I'm just very thankful at this moment because I know that it's a year-by-year thing. This isn't
Yeah.
a given, and this isn't promised to me. So I'm going to continue to enjoy it, and I'm very glad that I have another year of this. I'm very glad I get to do this, and I hope I could do this as long as possible.
Oh, yeah, totally.
All right, Lock Haven.
Let's do it. Let's
You
get
ready
into
to get
it.
into
Let's
it?
get into
Okay,
it.
let's flip this hat around. Let's get started. There you go. That's gonna be the inside
nice,
job.
nice
there.
little
There we go.
benchmarker.
For the big viewers, the ones that tune in the most. So Lock Haven took on Cal.
they
Lock
did.
Haven 6, 8th ranked Cal 48.
Or
Was the
42.
final? Did I say 48? 42.
42, yep.
42-6. That was the final score in that one. Here's the big thing that I came out of. And once again, I gave your article that I read in the Sun Gazette the page view and then clicked out of it
Yep.
because I didn't want to see exactly what you thought. Well, first off, a little bit more in the game. Cal scored 35 unanswered points in this game, all in the first quarter. A little bit of different ways, I would say. Some on the ground, some over the air. They were a very balanced team. Roman
on
Purcell,
defense
one
even.
of his better games. Got one on defense, of course. Here's the big thing that I took out of this, and I talked with Dave Stratton, who's thankfully back after a long drive in New Jersey, got a safe trip back. Thankful for that. He asked me, "Hey, what was up? What was up with that game?" And I told him, IUP, which we just talked about, they were played off the field, so to speak. Other teams, just a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, better executed. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? My thing with this game, with Cal, is that it it could have been much closer.
Yeah.
But I think, and I find myself in a weird way more positive after Cal because IUP, I don't think they really could have done anything to prevent that score. IUP won that game, but I felt like Lock Haven beat themselves. And for some reason, I feel more positive about that game because, Ryan, if you beat yourself, you could hypothetically fix that.
You could not beat yourself, and then, yeah.
You
Yeah.
could not beat yourself, and I don't think that means they win the game. I don't. The Lock Haven podcast is back
Yeah.
saying, But
Yeah.
I think that would have been a much closer game than 42-6. I even said as far as maybe like a 2-possession game, even.
Yeah.
Because when you pile on the mistakes and the touchdowns that were called back and the pick 6 on the receiver we'll go through it. My big thought is I feel weirdly more positive about this game than the one before because you can look internally at a lot of these mistakes that happen. I feel like I'm yapping a lot to start this one, but that's my opinion on that.
No, and I agree with you. I think that there was a lot of things that they could have fixed in that game. There was a few not a few turnovers. There was a few penalties that cost them on the third down in the first half. They got an roughing the passer that gave Cal the ball back. Cal went down to score. They go up 14-0. What happens if that doesn't happen? Does the offense, are they able to play a little bit more to their style? Because Lock Haven did a good job running the ball in this game. They ended up running for a little over 100 yards. And if you take out the sack numbers, it looks even better than that. The problem with that was they just didn't have time to run the ball. I mean, they were almost immediately down. It felt like 28-0. And then from there, it was trying to play catch up through the entire game. I do think there were some things that we saw better from Lock Haven. The offensive side of the ball looked a lot better, especially in that end of the first half and into the second half. They started to move the ball a bit better. The passing attack finally felt like it was finding some rhythm. The offensive line cleaned up as the game went on. It felt like they kept getting better. But you mentioned it, Lock Haven, there was a lot of self-inflicted mistakes, and they talked about it after the game, that they knew that there were some things that they could clean up. But the big takeaway I had from the game was they just played two really good teams back-to-back, and it's really hard when you play an IUP team that's going to contend for the PSAC West. A Cal team who won the PSAC West last year will very likely find themselves in a deep run in the Division II playoff this year. They played two really good teams, and it looked like they played two really good teams. I mean, there was a lot of things where it just looked like they got out-athleted at times. And that's going to happen in any game. You're always going to have some sort of mismatch somewhere, but it just kind of felt like, and more against IUP than it did against Cal, it felt like across the board, there was just a lot of guys that couldn't really do much because they were going against, Division I transfers. Like Cal had a guy who's a transfer from Texas, transfer from Indiana.
That was Diave Johnson, I believe, the receiver.
The receivers transfer from Texas. I mean, when you play guys like that, obviously there's a different caliber there almost. But I think Lock Haven did well, all things considered. I think the 42-6 makes the game look a lot worse than it was. There was some chances where Lock Haven was able to move the ball down the field. It looked like they were getting a rhythm. Where against IUP, it didn't feel like they had any rhythm at all. So I think that there were some things to improve on for sure, but I think that this week, despite the score being worse, this week was a better week than last.
Well, I want to harp on the mistakes again just for a second because, I could think of 3 plays off the top of my head that you already harped on. 3 plays that are a 21-point swing.
Yeah.
In 3 plays. 1, the 3-and-out that should have been a 3-and-out for Cal when I think they were only up 7-0 or 14-0.
Yeah,
one of those.
102.
When an unnecessary, inexcusable roughing the passer penalty continued to drive 2 plays later, they were in the end zone.
Yep.
Play number 2. Was the pick 6. Wide receiver fell, slipped. Cornerback took it. Receiver shouldn't have. I think that's easy as. 3rd play, Rocco Doherty, pick 6, called back for an illegal blindside block 30 yards away from the play when Doherty was about to cross the end zone. That's 3 plays. That's 21 points off of the board.
Yep.
So it turns a 35-point loss into an 11-point loss. And you can say whoop, whoop. But when you're playing a team of a lesser caliber than Cal, who's the 8th-ranked team in the country, that's going to lose you football games.
Yeah.
And we have seen we saw a lot of times last year, calamitous mistakes cost you games.
Yep.
IUP, Cal, Shepherd.
Westchester.
Yep. Those are 4 games right there that were decided by a calamitous, unsportsmanlike, unnecessary roughness, yada, yada, yada penalty.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the biggest thing that needs to be fixed with this team because I think this team shows quality, obviously not to compete in the PSAC, but compete for wins.
Yeah.
Compete to be competitive. And if you can turn that into a performance that can harpen on some of the top teams, like the team that's coming in this Saturday against East Stroudsburg, you can start to build respect and build a culture within this program. But you can't do that if you're undisciplined.
Yeah, and that was a big stress for them last year. I know I've brought this up before. When I talked to Lock Haven's head coach, Joe Battaglia, before the beginning of the season, it was told to me about 4 or 5 times that the biggest focus this offseason was cleaning up those mistakes. That's the thing that they wanted to fix and clean up the most. And it worked in week 1. In week 1 against Glenville State, barring the end of the first half that led to a Glenville State touchdown, they did a really good job at not committing those.
26 penalty yards the entire game.
Exactly.
And 10 of those were on the back-to-back offsides.
Yes. So they did a really good job, and there was a few times where there could have been that, typical unnecessary roughness call that they could call on a lot last year. And this team has built a reputation. I mean, when you look at the PSAC message boards, this team has built a reputation as being a trash-talking, some would even say dirty team. I don't think it goes that far.
Well, that was a big debate I can recall even talking about on air, so I don't mind bringing it up. I never thought dirty was the word to describe it, but I think undisciplined was.
Yeah, that's the big. It's not like they're headhunting. Like, it's not the 2000 whatever Saints. It's not Downey Gate. That's not
shout
what it is.
Shout out to the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and shout out to that really bad movie with I forget who the actor was.
Wasn't it Kevin Costner? No,
it wasn't Kevin Costner. It was
what was a movie about this? Though?
Yes, and it was played by a guy that looks nothing like Sean Payton. Anyway, aside, but dirty is never the word you would use to describe this team. It's more of just either undisciplined or I would even say at times unfocused, where it kind of just felt like the adrenaline of the game got to them too much, and it would cause them to have those frustration fouls or whatever you may call them that ended up costing them big time in games. But that is the one thing they stressed on a lot this offseason, and it's something that I think as we go on, as this young team continues to grow and mature, we'll see change. But it certainly cost them big time against Cal.
So I want to think about something positive about the defense. Cal's the best rushing team, I think, in the PSAC, or one of the best. Yeah. In the end, 5.3 yards a carry. That's not the best.
It's not otherworldly like they have been.
I thought as the game progressed, it got marginally better.
Yeah.
And I thought that, I mean, listen, you gave up 6 points in the second half. And in a quarter and a half, the starters were still in the game.
Yeah.
For both teams.
And
I
Cal
think
Cal was not taking their foot off the gas. I mean, we saw at the end of the first half. They were going for the throat. They were not taking anything off.
And Purcell is slippery. And Bobby Boyd Jr., who is the tailback, is slippery too.
Yeah.
Very slippery quarterback, tailback tangents that I found myself being very impressed with. Not a lot of TFLs, obviously, but I think that, again, you saw glimpses of, okay, I remember that against Glenville State. I remember that against IUP. You know, they're going to take on a East Stroudsburg team that I think is the best rushing attack in the East.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to find out more about it. But I don't think it wasn't a disheartening, like, oh, they gave up 9 yards, they gave up 9 yards a carry to this guy. And, it was just, there was never a chance here.
Cal didn't feel unbeatable. Like, it didn't feel like
IUP did.
Or the
let's be honest. I thought IUP and like the two big blowouts like in recent memory that we think of are Kutztown 24-0 and then IUP 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, can I just say something? I think IUP is the second best team in the PSEC.
I think they might be the best team in the PSEC.
The best.
I tell you what.
Oh, okay.
Like, because with Cal, you felt like
put that on a message board.
We're just gonna keep bringing that up.
I'm sorry.
We're just gonna keep going.
It's just because it's funny. We learned to.
So for those who don't know, there was a thing on the PSAC message boards. Oh, they brought up.
We talked about it last.
They
week
brought up
enough.
the podcast.
We talked about it last week enough.
But no, like Cal felt vulnerable. There was points of the game where I thought that Lock Haven could score a touchdown here or get a defensive stop. IUP felt IUP felt invincible in that game. It kind of felt like no matter what Lock Haven tried to do, it just didn't work. Like, Lock Haven was able to run the ball well versus Cal, like we mentioned. They found some rhythm in the passing game. Against IUP, they didn't have anything. I think IUP is, I would say as of right now, and I haven't watched Slippery Rock play, and I know how good Slippery Rock always has been. Right now, with what
IUP's
I've
offense has the potential to be an all-time good offense.
And I think that defense might be better. That defense was smothering. And this is Lock Haven, and we'll have to see as the year goes on. This Lock Haven offense, I think this Lock Haven offense will be a mid-table piece. I think they're good. IUP shut them down to the point where they couldn't move the football. Like, it made it look so hard to do anything. That IUP team is really good. But anyway, back to the positives here.
Can I bring up? Oh, keep on.
I said, well, the one big positive I had from this game was that they rotated some new guys in, and some new guys played well. I mean, you look at the receiver room. Connor Foltz, the Central Mountain wide receiver, true sophomore, had a really good game, a really good catch in the end zone, ended up finishing for one catch, 21 yards, and a touchdown. That touchdown got reviewed. Originally called incomplete, was reversed and ruled a touchdown. It was a really good catch by him as well. Look, defensively, they had some guys play. Gavin Papp saw some more snaps. Got new guys in the secondary. Q McMillan getting some new snaps.
This team feels like it's got depth in it.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like there's guys competing for spots here.
And I mentioned this in my article. After the game, Coach Battaglia mentioned that on the field, the turf was like 90 degrees. So they kind of knew that they were going to have to rotate some guys in. I wonder if that did play a part in it. Obviously, I also wonder if when the game started getting out of hand, they were just like, we're going to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. I think there were some guys that played in Saturday's game that we're going to see more often because they played pretty well. So I think that's the big takeaway I had that's positive, is that they're making some changes, and I think that we saw some changes that are going to prove to be for the better.
So you mentioned the passing offense.
Yeah.
I think it was probably the most versatile it's been. Even against Glenville State, I don't think they were this versatile. You had 3 guys with 3 catches or more. Popovich, Roberts, and Watson. All 3 were the starting receivers,
Yep.
and I think that is pretty much ironed out. You're going to have guys come in. I'd like to see Deion King come in more, only because I've seen him run 2 routes, and he has beaten his
He's fast.
He's beaten his defensive pack both times.
He is the fastest
Now, once
receiver
with a
they have.
sack, the other was, overthrown. But I think King can offer something. Obviously Darrell Caesar's got speed. But here's the biggest factor in this game that we're not talking about.
Yeah.
They've got something going on the ground.
They do.
And I'm willing
they have a good run game.
I am willing now, after what happened against IUP, to say that against one of the more mid-table PSAC teams, not East Stroudsburg, but maybe Bloomsburg in 2 weeks, this could be a real run-heavy team. Demir Green averaged 7.7 yards a carry.
Yeah, and this
7 touches, 54 yards. Ezekiel Johnson averaged 5.5. Kareem Hathcock averaged 4.5. And Tyson Florence, who came on in the last drive of the game against the backups, yeah, but so was Lock Haven playing backups, averaged 5.5. Is this, like, I'm willing to put more pressure on this running offense to produce, because we both know that's what carried the Glenville State game offensively. Obviously, IUP, you give credit to them. They stacked the box with 8 guys. I mean, they were able to shut it down and then some.
Yeah.
I mean, Lock Haven finished with negative rushing yards in that game. But you're doing it against Cal? When Cal is expecting it?
If you take sack yardage away, they finished with 145 rushing yards. If you nullify all of the sack yardage, because obviously in college sacks count against rushing yards. I think this will be a good running team. They unfortunately couldn't do it much against IUP or against Cal. Like, Demir Green had 7.7 yards per carry, but only got 7 attempts. Because when you're immediately down 21-0, you kind of can't run the ball at that point because you're forced to try to throw your way back into the game, and that is not the game that Lock Haven wants to play. This team is built to be low scoring, run the ball, keep time of possession, and win low-scoring games like they did against Glenville State. The problem is that was also how Cal was built. That's the way Cal wants to run the ball. They want to run the ball, control the clock, win a low-scoring game. And when you're playing 2 teams, it comes down to who executes better, and Cal executed better than Lock Haven did. But I do think this will be a really good ground game. I think Johnson and Demir complement each other really well. Johnson, the more fast running back, and is a better pass catcher than Demir Green. Green is that more 3 down, kind of give him the ball, let him go to work type running back. I think if you work those 2 in and sprinkle in Kareem Hathcock every now and again just as a change of pace back and a 3rd down back, this can be one of the best running back rooms in the PSAC. I truly do believe that, because this offensive line has also done a really good job in the run game. We'll take the IUP game out of it, because IUP, just like you said, they ran 9 guys in the box every time. This offensive line did a really good job at giving them lanes to run through. Pass protection, there was a bit more concern there, especially from the interior, but they made some adjustments in the interior, and it really proved to work out. I think this run game is going to be really good, and I think it's something that Bald Eagle fans are going to be able to look forward to.
And I think we need to bring up the pass game just to close this out, because that was kind of the big thing we harped on.
Yeah.
Ostrowski, 3rd straight game under 200 passing yards, 17-28, 149, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. One of those interceptions was on 4th down in goal, just kind of hoisted into
and the other one is when the receiver tripped. So both of those you can't really put on the, because when he throws that first interception that leads to be a pick 6, the guy's up. And he was open. Yeah. Just unfortunately got tripped up. The ball lands right in the cornerback's lap. Those are 2 picks that you don't blame on the quarterback at all. So I think Ostrowski played well, all things considered. There was some missed throws that I noticed. There was some guys that were open that were either overthrown or just weren't looked at a lot of the time. There was a few where they had guys up the middle of the field.
I should also say sacked 4 times, hit a 5th time.
Yeah, like he got walloped against IUP as well, and that will lead to him maybe not having enough time to go through all of his reads like normal, but there were some misses in there as well. But I think Ostrowski played, I would say, his best of the 3 games so far, all things considered. I think he's getting better as the games go on. And I also, when you get hit that much, you always wonder, is there some sort of injury there? Because it does look like at times he wasn't as confident in stepping up at the pocket and running as he was last year. So you speculate, and obviously it's all speculation as to if something's going on or not. But I think he's gotten better as every game goes on, and I think that trend will continue.
Can I make one more observation about the offense? It seems very, and this isn't a negative, it seems very plug and play.
Yes.
In that, I don't know. I can't help but harp at the fact that Cole Transu walked in on the last drive and looked like a 2 for 2, 11 yards.
For the second week in a row.
The tailback came in, and I can't help but feel like this offense, again, basic seems like a bad thing to say about an offense. But it seems like you can get a guy adjusted to it quickly. That's what I meant by it. Like, it doesn't seem like, And I could be completely wrong. Maybe it's the most complicated offense in the world. That's why I'm in the broadcast booth and on the sideline. But from my perspective, looking at the way that, how many delayed game penalties have Lock Haven had?
Not
One
many.
on special teams on a punt.
I think
it's like, okay,
yeah.
get the play on the sideline. I feel like there isn't a lot of complexity, and that isn't a bad thing. I feel like it's very hey, here's the play. Go ahead, do your thing. I feel like we have a lot less delayed games this season.
Yeah.
And I feel like amongst anyone, a lot of guys in the two deep can plug and play into this offense. So, I mean, we saw Connor Fultz have a touchdown reception. I haven't heard of him in 2 years. I'm
Nope.
gonna be completely honest, folks. I remember him in Central Mountain a couple years back. Yeah. I knew we had a guy. I knew we had him on the team, but to have him come in and instantly get a receiving touchdown, I think that says something about the system and its simplicity. And I think when you have something that's simple like that, it's easier to improve on it, and it's easier to dust off the edges from. And I feel like we're being way too positive on a game that finished 42-6, but IUP, we didn't really have a lot to work with, and I feel like this game we do, and that means something.
And I think you mentioning the basicness of the offense, I would say that's the right term, and that's not a bad thing. When you have a team that is working with 5 new pass catchers, is a young offensive line, you've lost almost all of your returning talent from last year is gone except the quarterback. You kind of have to have the offense basic at first because these are guys that are getting their first ever college snaps. These are not guys that they're bringing in that are transfers that have played elsewhere. These are guys that this is the first time they've ever seen the field. So keeping that offense basic, well, yes, maybe it makes it predictable at times. What it also leads to is it allows your guys to grow in the system. And as the weeks go on, the more comfortable guys get, the more complicated it can get. So I think basic is exactly the right term, and I think that's by design. I think that is how they want to run this offense to start, get guys comfortable with the system, and then as you start PSAC East play, maybe sprinkle in a bit. And that is kind of the last thing I want to mention is, and Coach Battaglia mentioned it after the game as well, yes, it sucks to lose these past 2 games as much as they have been. Ultimately, the games don't matter. All that matters is your PSAC East play. PSAC West play does not even count towards your conference standing. They are considered out-of-conference games in all but name. So, yes, it is certainly a morale hit to lose the games how you lost them. At the end of the day, this team's goals are all still in front of them.
I could tell we're more positive because we were about less than halfway done with last week's episode when we talked about our future opponent. And we only have about 15 minutes left of this one. So that tells you what we think about it. Let's just run through the East calendar.
Yep.
Tale of two halves here.
Oh, yeah.
Just a completely brutal start.
Yeah.
You're East Stroudsburg, who's coming off of the best offensive performance in recent memory, except IUP had 70 points, but for East Stroudsburg's perspective, one of their best. On the road at Bloom, who's probably the best Bloom team in a couple of years. Home against Kutztown. Uh-oh. Home against Westchester. Uh-oh. And then the second half, you've got Shippensburg and Millersville, who I would say are 2 games the Bald Eagles just might be favorites in. Shepherd at home, which is the worst Shepherd team since they joined the PSAC. And then Gannon at home, who just conceded 69 points
nice.
to Lock Haven's opponents this Saturday. It's East Stroudsburg, the Warriors. You know them. You love them. The Warriors, perennial contenders in the PSAC East. They come into this year with a record of 2-1, dropping in a very ugly game against Edinburgh.
Yeah.
I would say ugly is the word. They lost 29-14 in that one, Ryan. They came back with a win against Pace, 31-12. Pace, a bit more of a nothing burger team. But heads turned with their performance against Gannon. It was a game where everyone got it together. And it is the exact last time you want to play a team like this.
Yeah.
Like, Lock Haven is facing East Stroudsburg at the worst possible time because they're facing a team that has gotten it together.
Yeah.
And you don't want to play a team that has it together like that.
And you mentioned that Edinburgh game. The more we go, the more that result feels like an outlier. They ended up falling to the Fighting Scots 14-29. And I remember that's one where we were getting ready for the Glenville game. We kind of looked at each other like, maybe this team isn't as good as we thought it was because we didn't have high expectations for Edinburgh, and when you see a result like that, it's kind of a head-turner. But then, credit to ESU, they have turned it around in a big way, and their quarterback, Sean McTaggart, through 2 games, has 1 incompletion. Now, he has only attempted 20 passes. He went 9 for 10 against Pace, and then he went 10 for 10 against Gannon with 4 touchdowns. He had 10 completions. Almost half of them were in the end zone. Just an incredible game, and he played really well against Lock Haven last year. And I think when you look ahead, I'm doing a little bit of look ahead to this game. When you talk about how Lock Haven is going to win this game, it's going to have to be a game that they're not comfortable playing. It's going to have to be a shootout. Because I really don't see a way where they hold East Stroudsburg to under 30 points. Just with how well this offense is played, it's going to be really hard to hold them under 30. For Lock Haven, they're going to have to score over 30. I think we are going to be in for a good old-fashioned shootout.
When you look at just the overall team stats, there's not a lot of weaknesses, just on both sides of the ball. I think one of the signals about East Stroudsburg is they're not a good defensive team. I'm not willing to go as far as to say that. Now, as far as opponents that Lock Haven has played, they might be, of the 4 games, maybe Glenville State has a weaker defense, but I wouldn't say by much because Glenville State retained a lot of talent. East Stroudsburg, they lost a couple starting linebackers, a couple in the secondary, a couple on the defensive line. They lost 6 of their 11 starters from last season. On the defensive side of the ball entirely. They've given up 21 points a game. That's around middle of the tier in the conference.
Yep.
And I think for Lock Haven, I mean, they need to score at least 20. I mean, they haven't done it yet this season. You have no shot at winning this game if you don't get at least 3 touchdowns on the board. That's my opinion.
And coming off the positive momentum they had at the end of that Cal game, you really feel like this is the game that they need to piece some things together. They need to string together consistent offensive drives. Because you're right, this Edinburgh team, I mean, you look at the rushing yards. They ran the ball 38 times against Gannon for 291 yards.
Oh, my.
And had 5 total touchdowns on the ground. I mean, we talked about how good of a rushing offense Cal is. Even Cal is not putting up numbers like that. And, oh, by the way, they also had 275 yards passing as well. So, when you put up over 500 yards of total offense, that 69-point total looks a little bit more believable and a little bit more understandable. But the question is with ESU, is how real was that Edinburgh game? Because you mentioned Pace, not really a good team. Gannon projected to be the doormat
in comparison to
PSAC.
PSAC.
Yes, yeah, okay, yeah. No, not trying to take some unwarranted shots here. In comparison to PSAC play, Pace is not on the level that most PSAC schools are. And Gannon, I will take a shot at. He's projected to be one of the worst teams in the PSAC this year. It's not really a surprise. But
can I just say, I put Pace at a similar level of Glenville State.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too disrespectful. You've got a team in the NE10 versus a team that's in the MEC.
Pace lost to Post, which, hey, shout out
Post.
3-0.
There we go.
I think more wins
Shout out
this
to
year.
the Eagles.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Shout out to Casey for this fact. I think it's the most wins they've ever had. I think their program history going into this season, they had less than 3 wins, and they got 3 wins to start the year. So shout out Post. They played Lock Haven a few years ago. Love Post in Connecticut, I think, is where they're located at.
Yes, sir.
But again, the question is, how real was that Edinburgh game? When Gannon plays another team, who Lock Haven probably a little bit of a step under Edinburgh, but on a similar level as to what Edinburgh is. We'll wait and see how good the Fighting Scots are this year. How real was that Edinburgh game, I think, is the big test. And Lock Haven returning home, we've seen them consistently when they play at home. Games end up being a little closer. I mean, you have the IUP game last year, the Cal game last year, both one-score games. Look at the Kutztown game 2 years ago, a game that ended 7-3, with a Kutztown team that was as good, if not better, than the team they have this year. And the team they have this year is really, really good. So they always kind of play teams closer to home. It was a close game against ESU last year. When they return to Hubert Jack Stadium, does that give them a little bit more momentum going into this game? It's going to be interesting to see, but when you look at going through the D2 message boards, they always do a pick'em week. East Stroudsburg right now, 24.5-point favorites on the road, and typically how betting works is home team gets about 3 points of home advantage on average, so really, East Stroudsburg is projected to win the game by 27 or more.
Can I tell you, I think that's fair. Based off of what Lock Haven has done and what East Stroudsburg has done. I think it's fair.
I think it's fair, but I don't think the game will be that bad. I think this will be a close game. I really do. What
is close to you? Because I don't. Because
Under 10. Under 10 points. I am factoring in that Lock Haven always plays teams close at home. No matter what, they always do.
I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. You know what I was gonna do?
No,
I'm not gonna
I
do
do.
it. I'm not gonna do it.
I think that, again, Lock Haven always plays teams close to home. And until I see that trend change, I'm not going to bet against it. I have 2 years of data that says when they play at home, it's typically a nail-biter. Either whether it's against a really good team, it's a nail-biter, or whether against a really bad team, it's a nail-biter. We saw it last year in that Millersville game. That was a heart-attack game, to say the least. They always play teams close at home. It always feels like it's a stressful ending one way or another. For better or for worse. I think that trend will continue. Again, I want to see ESU play. And the real test for ESU will be next week at Westchester. That's really where we'll see if this team is real or not. But I do think it'll be a close game. But we're not getting into the predictions part of it yet unless we want to feed right into it. But
here's what I'll say. I'm gonna make a stat, and I'm gonna see if this is correct or not. We're still 10 minutes away.
Yeah, okay.
From the end of this, so
we've got some time.
If Lock Haven has less than 30 penalty yards in the game,
what's their record?
I don't know.
That's
well, they're 1-0 because they did it against Glenville State. But if they have less than 30 penalty yards, it is a 2-possession game or better.
Yeah.
Because East Stroudsburg's big weakness this season is that they are undisciplined. They have, on average, 79 penalty yards a game. That is third worst in the PSAC. They just had 139 penalty yards against Gannon, and I haven't looked at Edinboro yet, but I guarantee once I do, they will see that they had 5 penalties for 55. Okay, that's not bad. Against Edinboro. But if Lock Haven can force and frustrate East Stroudsburg early, like they did last year.
Yep.
Another 1-possession game, like they did last year. If they're able to frustrate the Warriors early on especially, I can see this game being a nip and tuck. I'm not saying that Lock Haven will upset them, but I think that this has the potential to be a close one. This has the potential to put the season back on the rails. And I think if this game can be competitive, I think Lock Haven will feel a lot better going to Bloomsburg the week after than if this is another 42-10, 42-17 game.
Yeah, and I'm looking through Edinboro's football schedule right now. So first week they beat East Stroudsburg on the road in East Stroudsburg, 29-14. They followed that up with a 34-0 shutout loss at home against Kutztown. Yeah, that's Kutztown. They're going to do it to everybody. Then they lose 34-18 to Bloomsburg, and that's the game that I was kind of harping on when I go back to how real was that Week 1 game for East Stroudsburg, because Bloomsburg has really struggled to start the year so far. And the things of, do they have a kicker? They had the 2-point conversion that failed in the game against. I'm drawing a blank on it at the moment. But anyway, Bloomsburg goes in the game. They're 0-2. We don't really know what that Bloomsburg team looks like. Seton Hill,
I think.
And Seton Hill is. Yes, no, that's correct. It is Seton Hill. And Seton Hill is not a perennial PSAC power, to say the least. They've struggled in recent years.
Clip that.
Hey, maybe
that's going to be the new thing. I'm just going to say clip that after.
Maybe Seton Hill will be good this year. I hope they are. I did visit Seton Hill campus.
Did you?
Well, it was when my sister was looking there.
All women's school at one point. Right?
That is a castle. When I tell you it looks like Hogwarts.
It's a private school now.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And it is a private Catholic school. It looks like Hogwarts. I have never seen a school that looks like a genuine castle. Crazy. If you want to visit Seton Hill, it looks great. But anyway. So going back to East Stroudsburg, it is Week 1, and I understand that Week 1 is fake. Week 1 never matters in any level of college football. Does not matter. It's fake. Never draw conclusions based off Week 1. So I'm not going to, but I will a little bit.
Shout out to West Virginia Robert Morris.
Right? Yeah. But so the big question for me is how real was Week 1 for them? Because again, you lose at home against Edinboro, who has struggled since. Is that a sign of maybe this team isn't as good as we think it is, or is that a sign of they were just knocking off the rust off and they're going to blow through the East like they did the past 2 years and be one of the top 3 teams in the East? Who knows? But I do think this will be a closer game because, again, I'm going to go with the home advantage for Lock Haven until it proves otherwise. We got about 6 minutes or so left of this, so we can go right into predictions.
Let's go right into it. I'll let you take the lead first.
I think this will be a high-scoring game. I think both teams eclipse It'll need to be a high-scoring game if Lock Haven wants to win, and I do think it will be a high-scoring game. I think both teams eclipse 24 in this game. I do think I will take East Stroudsburg to win. I think I'll say the final score is 31-27, but I do think it'll be a close game.
One possession.
And maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself saying one possession. Maybe it'll be a bit more than that. But again, until it proves wrong, I'm going to go with the assumption that they're going to play better at home, and it's going to be a heart attack game, as it always is, which will be fun for us to call if it is that. I do think East Stroudsburg wins. I think it's a bit closer, but I think it's going to be a game where you look back, and either way it goes, that Lock Haven had a real puncher's chance.
I'm going to say the same, but I think the end result's a little bit wider. Like,
Okay.
I think maybe they go a little bit blow for blow. They hang around a little bit,
Yeah.
make things a little interesting. But I'm going to go 42-21.
All right.
That's what I have as the final. I think that they hang around. I think East Stroudsburg, I'll go as far as to say as their offense is better than Cal's offense overall, because McTaggart has the ability to make completions, and the receivers, I think, for East Stroudsburg have a better ability at getting open. I think Jalen Andrews is insane. I remember when he was in high school a couple years ago with Loyal Sock. I think he is an insanely good talent. I think McTaggart, very efficient. You know, he brushed up on the mistakes that happened in week 1, that 2-interception game. I think it was 2 interceptions he threw against Edinburgh, and I think he's become a very more comfortable I mean, he's been doing this forever.
Yeah.
I remember McTaggart last season. Year before that, he was around. You know, so I think that East Stroudsburg is going to be a lot more buttoned up than against Edinburgh. I don't think they're going to make a lot of mistakes. I just don't see it. Now, Lock Haven, I think, still looks to impress, and I think they do impress in the game.
Yep.
I think the offense has their best performance of the season,
Okay.
even. I would go as far maybe to say that. East Stroudsburg has the second best rush defense in the PSAC. I would love to see the Bald Eagles challenge that.
Yep.
I would love to see them open the field with the passing and establish the pass to get the run going. So I have a lot of hope for this game. A loss isn't a disaster for me, but I think East Stroudsburg does take it by multiple possessions. At the same time, I think Lock Haven has positives going into Bloomsburg next week. And I'm going to be very, I don't want to say quiet with my expectations, but I'm going to be a real sit back. Let's see what this team can do.
Very conservative expectations on where it goes.
Even though East Stroudsburg is a very impressive team, the fact is this is the this is the third ranked team out of 4 that they played this season. You know,
Yeah.
I think IUP and Cal.
And that's not a shot at ESU. It's just
No,
that's how
it's
good
not.
IUP and Cal are.
It's just how good ESU is. You know, I think we play. How about this? I'll say this: we play one team better than ESU the rest of the season, and that's Kutztown. That's
Who knows?
I'll go as far as to
Westchester's
say
look
that.
good. Westchester's look good.
I think East Stroudsburg is the second best team they play the rest of the season. And I think you have to put that into the context of this season, the way the schedule is set. You still have to look good. You still have to impress. And you need to get a freaking win against Bloomsburg in 2 weeks. And I think it's all about building to Bloomsburg in 2 weeks, because I think that is going to be the real flashpoint of the season.
rivalry game.
We said that. We said that before the season started, how big Bloomsburg was. I remember straight up saying an exact quote: if they lose against Glenville, they're going to be 0-4 going into Bloomsburg.
Yeah.
And they got the win against Bloom, and they got the win against Glenville. And I think going into Bloom, if you could put a respectable showing against East Stroudsburg, you have real potential to turn this season into your favor. And I think if you have a performance like you think they're gonna, then maybe something very surprising could happen outside of Westchester and Kutztown. Something pretty impressive can happen the rest of the way.
And the key to that game, that's the final point I'll give on it, the key to the game against ESU is going to be winning the turnover battle. And Lock Haven has done a good job forcing turnovers. They forced multiple turnovers.
It's a playmaking defense.
Yes, they forced multiple turnovers against
Glenville.
IUP. Glenville, they had a few. They had the pick six against IUP. They had the forced fumble as well. They almost had a pick 6 against Cal. I think they forced two
Should've.
turnovers. They forced 2 turnovers, I think, also in that game as well. Because was there a fumble mixed in there?
Might have been.
At some point, I feel like there might have been. So Lockett has done a good job at being a very opportunistic defense, and if McTaggart throws a ball or two their way, I think they're going to be able to come away with it, and that's going to be the key to the game. If they cannot win the turnover battle, I think the game could get ugly, and McTaggart's done a good job at not making the mistakes he made in week 1. But if they can get a turnover or 2, if they can be +1 or +2 in that turnover differential, and if they can establish the run game, I think it will be a close game. Again, time will tell. We're not going to make any wild predictions on here as to how it's going to go. Time will tell. but I do think it will be a close game, and I think either way it will be a confidence-building game going into Bloomsburg.
Right, that's our show for the week. We'll be back next week. For Ryan States, I'm Nicholas Severini. You're tuning in to the Haven Nation Show.